You know you have a controversial product line when almost every product in that product line has made its way onto AudioPill's Bad Gear review channel at one point or another. Today, we're going to talk about the Roland Boutique Series and one of its latest modules, the JX-08. Stay with us. Hi, I'm Zach Marr from Alamo Music here in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications. This is our Alamo Sound Lab channel where we talk about all things music tech related. And today we're talking about the new Roland Boutique module, the JX-08. And I have to say, I'm super excited about this specific module because I have a very special love and affection for the JX-8P, which it's based on. The JX-8P was released in the mid-80s, 1985, as analog was going out in terms of being not as trendy as digital. The DX7 had emerged on the scene, and so some of the synths in the mid to late 80s that were analog are really amazing. They kind of took analog to the furthest point that had been the furthest point to which it had been explored at that time, but they were not necessarily as loved or sought after, and so a lot of those synths were made in smaller numbers. They didn't have as many special moments in history and music history, and it's not until recently that people have gone back and kind of dug up a lot of these kind of sleeper classics and begun to explore and use them in modern music. And so I was surprised when they released the JX-08, or they announced it, because it does have a following. There are people that love it, but it's not a Juno 60, it's not a Jupiter 8. It's definitely a tier. It's definitely, in terms of collectability and kind of talked aboutness, much less discussed and much less appreciated. Although that has changed in the last couple years with the growing kind of vintage collector community and the awareness that a lot of the VSTs and kind of cloud technologies have brought to some of these other classics. So let's talk about the JX-08. I think this is Roland's best boutique yet, and I think it is for a number of reasons. A lot of the other boutiques have been kind of maligned or talked badly about because they were only 4-voice. The JU-06A, which I think a lot of people love, and the Jupiter 8, I think it's the JU-08, the JP-08. A lot of these kind of polyphonic synths, when they're reduced down to 4 voices, become very limited. And one of the main complaints about previous boutiques was that they only had 4 voices. This one has 20 voices. So you can see, a lot of times people say, well, Roland's not listening. Maybe Roland has started to listen. You see 20 voices on here. You also see a lot of expanded functionality that you don't see in the original. So a lot of times the complaint is also, well, why don't you add more features, more tweakability, more modern things that would enhance these synths and kind of be a modern take on them? You find that in the JX-08. Specifically, it has an arpeggiator built in, which the original didn't have. Has a sequencer. It also has bitimbrality. You can split and layer. And it has a bunch of additional effects, all things that were not found on the original and also on a lot of the other boutiques. They might have an additional feature here or there, but this one really adds quite a bit and makes this kind of an evolved take on the JX-8P. In many ways, you could argue it's almost like a JX-10, the big brother, the kind of latter version of the JX-8P. We've done a couple videos on both if you're interested in learning more about those. So let's talk about how realistic it is. So one of the things that's changed in this boutique is it's not using the ACB technology, the analog circuit behavior technology. It's using ACM technology, so analog circuit modeling. And there is a trade-off that comes with that. Typically, the ACB is associated with high fidelity emulation of these original analog behemoths. So the ACB was attempting to model the behavior, the complex behavior of the analog synths, not just the voices that they produce, not just the sound, but also the quirkiness and kind of uniqueness of these instruments. And they did a great job. The ACM technology and the Zencore technology, which you find in the Jupiter X, is a little less focused on that, on having a high fidelity emulation, and more giving you the overall sound and feel of these synths. And with the JX-08, specifically, when I plugged it in and played it, I was immediately taken back to the JX-8P. I haven't had a chance to play them side by side, and we're going to do a follow-up video where we explore that, but it really captures the feel of the JX-8P, and I really was surprised because typically when I've played the other ACM kind of emulations of these classic synths, I'm usually more a fan of the ACB. And really, I'm surprised because I've looked, and the Jupiter X has the same voice engine in it, but it sounds different in this module, and this could all be in my head, and I'm going to do a comparison against the Jupiter X as well, but I'm wondering, there is some new effects apparently inside this module, and I'm wondering, specifically there's, I think, a new lo-fi compressor, and I'm wondering if they have introduced some new effects in this module and new modeling that it has given it, that it's kind of sculpted the ACM emulation to be more authentic and give the feel more of the original JX-8P. I'm totally spitballing here, but it definitely, when I played it, I was like, this doesn't sound like the Jupiter X JX-8P emulation, and that doesn't make any sense because I think it's based on the same technology. So something to explore in the future. Other cool things, it's 20 voices. It also has the sequencer. I think it's a polyphonic sequencer, has an arpeggiator, has a bunch of effects built in. Really nice control panel layout. It's basically the original JX-8P had an additional controller that you could buy, and almost, if you buy them on the used market, they're almost as expensive as the keyboard itself. This combines it. You get the hands-on controls and the original board with a bunch of patches. Also, yeah, a ton of patches in here, which I think is, again, really nice addition on this boutique. So let's listen to it, get a sense of the way it sounds, and we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So there you have it, the JX-08. I know, like any boutique, it's already causing controversy. Some people swearing that it sounds nothing like the original, others saying that there would be no reason to buy an original at this point with this module being released. I'm sure it'll find its way onto AudioPill's Bad Gear review channel just for the fact that it's highly controversial. I personally think this is the best boutique that's been released yet, and I'm a big fan of the Boutique series in general. So definitely worth checking out. I think the JX-8P is still a very underrated vintage synth in my opinion, given what other vintage synths go for. It's got a wonderful, warm, lush sound. The pads are fantastic, and it has the best analog patch for pianos that I've heard in any vintage analog synth, and that patch is in the Boutique module as well. Even though it's not analog anymore, it still has that vibe. There's this kind of really noisy chorus that was in the original JX-8P that this has a similar sound. They managed to recreate it. So a lot of fun, really enjoyed it. Some questions I have is, what revision was this based on? Apparently, and this isn't well documented, but there was 3 revisions of the original JX-8P, and they all had slightly different tweaks and had some slight sound differences. It's not something I've had a chance to explore, but I'm curious what this was based on, if they even got that detailed in the ACM modeling. Also, I wonder if this is a nod to the JX-10 with the bitemporality. There's definitely some things that you find, and delay. There's some things you find in here that you found in the JX-10 that wasn't in the JX-8P, so very cool. I would love to hear your thoughts. We're gonna do some comparisons with the original in another video, but give me your thoughts below. Would love to continue this conversation below in the chat, or if you wanted to come and talk more, come to alamomusic.com. You can email us, give us a call. We'd love to talk to you there too. Thanks for watching today, and until next time.